My name is Charlotte, and at 32 years old, my parents disinherited me and gave everything to my brother, saying I didn't need their help. Years later, they came begging when he abandoned them. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. I always knew my parents didn't see me how they viewed Ethan, a 30-year-old guy. But knowing is different from accepting. I always hoped they'd see more than the child who didn't need them in me. A rapid grower, I would handle it alone so they could ignore it. I lost my modest hope when they informed me about the will. No screaming, dramatic debate, or terrible betrayal. Nonchalant and almost indifferent. My mother phoned and asked me to visit when I could. She said they had something to talk about. My father was reading a newspaper and my mother making coffee when I arrived in the living room. It seemed natural, even enjoyable. Once I sat down, my father put down the paper and got to the point. Their will altered. Everything was going to Ethan. I thought I misheard everything. My dad nods. They owned their house, savings, and lake house. My mother, always sympathetic, put her hand on mine and said they did this because Ethan promised to care for them. He promised they would never be alone and would manage things when they got older. And me? I nearly didn't ask, but I did. My father smiled like he was saying something pleasant. You don't need it, told him. You've always been independent. You'll be fine. I watched them hoping they were joking or had contemplated what this meant. There was nothing. No doubt, no shame. Their choice was made. They understood well. I've always been okay alone, so why change? Some part of me broke. Not the money, no, not the home. The realization that I was never in their plans. They thought I'd keep doing what I did without thinking. I didn't argue. I stayed longer, recalling how they looked at me, confident this was the right choice. Then I stood. Mom phoned me, but I ignored her. Outside, I got in my car and left. I never asked them to reconsider. Never tried to express the pain. The point? The choice was made. I'll make mine. I'm not sure how long I waited in my car outside their house. Maybe minutes or 45. After turning off the engine, I clutched the wheel so tightly that my knuckles hurt. All the weight of the world fell on me. The confirmation of something I'd always denied. I was not planned for their future. I was their guest, someone they loved in theory, but never considered. I was a responsible, independent daughter. Ethan always needed them more, so they kept that. It was easier to revolve their lives around him than to acknowledge I was waiting. It was the hardest part because I had spent years pretending I didn't care or didn't need them to love me as much as they loved Ethan. However, sitting in my car, swallowing my throat, I had to face reality. I always thought that if I worked hard and proved myself, people would notice me and choose me once. The answer was found. I started my car and left. Please excuse my strange mood. I'll update later. Update 1. After that day, I gave up. Not dramatically. Emotional conflicts were avoided. No confirmation that I was done. Just let go. First, I stopped calling. I stopped making excuses for why they never contacted me and stopped pretending I didn't notice how quickly people forgot me when I wasn't there. The distance may have escaped them at first. They sent the whole family Christmas invites and pleasantries. My mother occasionally texted me, but it was brief and impersonal. Hope you're well. Staying busy? She never inquired about my mood. My father never called. I assured myself everything was all right. A good life was mine. I built everything myself without their help. I had a rewarding job and kind colleagues. I built a house for myself. However, silent, unexpected melancholy seeped in. When I got a promotion at work, I instinctively grabbed my phone but found no one to call. Not really. My family wouldn't care. My career was never considered just Ethan's. They always boasted about him, honored for accomplishments, or when I gently declined their invitation and spent my first Christmas alone. They didn't inquire why. My absence from the family gathering was minor and easily forgotten. I sat on my couch that night, wondering whether my tiny Christmas tree's bright lights realized I wasn't there. They might not have. Maybe they did. It didn't matter. I should have known it would end. I wasn't needed till then. When they needed me, they remembered me so well, it was almost humorous. It started with a few small things. My mother wrote longer than usual. Just checking in, she said. You haven't communicated recently. I remained calm. A week later, another. She briefly discussed Ethan's new employment and moved to another state. No facts or accusations are given, just typical discourse. I've not reacted. Then Dad called. I watched his name show on the screen for a while before putting it to voicemail. My mother tried again the nenext day. She messaged. "We want to see you," she said. Her voice was strange and hesitating. "Call me when you have time." It should have been ignored. I tried to ignore it, but my foolish side, which still wants what I will never have, hesitated. I was worried about something significant happening. So, I called. My mother answered the first ring, breathless and relieved. She asked how I was doing and that she missed me. Each remark was carefully crafted. I was confused. I didn't hear such phrases from her. Then she said, "Could you visit? Your father and I were wondering for dinner only." Asking why? A break, then quieter. Recent times have been tough. It wasn't spoken explicitly. She requested information. She wanted me to start the conversation so she could explain. I did not. Still, she persevered. Ethan had left. She told me he and his wife relocated too far to visit often. My parents thought this was temporary. Ethan will keep his promise once they know where they are. But he hadn't. He seldom called. He seemed distant and rushed. He was busy. His existence now had duties. They helped them buy their first property, pay for his education and wedding. After receiving everything, he had nothing left. My parents believed for years that Ethan would protect them as they aged. They had rewritten their will for him and trusted him. But now they realized their mistake. I silently listened as my mother tried to make it appear like they weren't unprepared for this and hadn't just admitted that they had never imagined I would stay. I let them talk. I let them ask. After Ethan left, my mother tentatively, anxiously, asked if I might come over more often and help them with a few things. I nearly laughed. It was heartbreaking, not funny. The choice was made years ago. They kept choosing Ethan. Now they were approaching me, expecting me to act as a backup plan, like a forgotten insurance policy they had remembered. I delayed responding, so I asked her the same thing I had years before. Last time they clarified my position. Why me? Another pause. My mother gasped, surprised. You mean what? You made it clear that Ethan was intended to care for you and that I wasn't. So why me? Why now? She searched for a response, but none could change what had happened. I let her sit in silence. In my calmest voice, I said, "I hope you figure it out, but it won't be with my help." I hung up. I stopped answering their questions after that. Update 2. I thought that was it. I expected they would see my silence as a clear answer and closed door. Yet I overestimated their ability to dismiss reality when it didn't suit them. It started little as usual. My mother texted me a week later. "We should talk." I remained calm. My father called twice in one day, then again the next. I sent everyone to voicemail. Every communication was more urgent than the last. My mother started with guilt. "You're being unreasonable. Families don't turn their backs on each other." My father was angry. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us." And my favorite, when they realized I wasn't giving in. "We need you to come home." Home? As if I had ever called that place home. Though I deleted the messages and moved on, they continued. They arrived at my door a month later. My mother was smaller than I remembered when I opened the door. My father stood behind her, face rigid and hands and fists ready for combat. They were not welcome. I asked what they wanted while leaning against the doorframe. Mother sighed as if I was harsh. "They just wanted to talk," she said. I told them they were talking. She paused before confessing. They struggled financially and emotionally. The money and years they spent funding Ethan's dreams had drained them. They never saved because they knew he would provide. Without a net, they drowned. I said nothing. I simply let the remarks pass. His voice was gruff when my father talked. He emphasized that they had made mistakes and been unfair to me, but I shouldn't leave them. Why not? That surprised him. He blinks at me as if he didn't expect the inquiry. I told them they had abandoned me years before and focused on Ethan while ignoring me. After their strategy failed, they expected me to fix it. "Not interested," I said. Face wrinkled mother. She tried to evoke emotion by saying they were my parents and families should care for one another. When had they ever treated me like Ethan? When was I prioritized? Knowing the truth, she couldn't react. I never went. Not once. They persisted. In the ensuing weeks, they tried everything. They tried pity, guilt, and manipulation. "We're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything. You're really going to let us struggle while you live so comfortably?" Ethan would have helped us if he could, but he has his own family now. "You're the only one we have left." None of it worked, since reality stayed consistent despite their claims. Not looking for a daughter, they wanted a nanny, a safety net. I wouldn't cater to them. I blocked their numbers afterward. It was the only way to stop them. It hurt, Yes, it did. Even after everything, losing them was like mourning something that never existed. I was prioritizing myself, which was plenty. Update 3. My block was months ago, peaceful months before freedom. I figured they'd quit. When I got home from work one night, I saw them on my doorstep. I should have known better. My mother was thinner and worried looking. My father stood next to her, his face distorted with anger and anguish. No sighing. I wasn't mad. I felt nothing. Walking up to my door, I unlocked it and faced them. You want what? My mother spoke immediately, as if she was frightened. I might slam the door in her face if she didn't. They were struggling more. Money was running out faster than expected. It was becoming worse. They did everything, but not enough. Ethan declined help, she exclaimed, still unable to accept it. Ethan's desertion appears recent. He stated he had family to tend. My father mumbled bitterly. He said we should have considered this sooner. I nodded. It made sense. I spoke what I'd been intending to say for a long time in the calmest, most even tone I'd ever used with them. Trust Ethan. Quiet followed. I watched their faces crumple with understanding. I wouldn't fix it. I wouldn't save them. My mother tried again, shaking her voice, stressing that he had to do his job. So what does that mean for me? I tilted my head as she attempted to respond. Because it didn't. It never has. Made your decision. Inform them. You invested in Ethan. You trusted him with your future. Now you're coping with the effects. This isn't my fault. My father, who gets angry first, bristled. He said I was cruel and enjoyed it. He said that I was punishing them for their mistakes, and that no genuine daughter would act this way. Raised eyebrow. He has a rich daughter. I assured him that a genuine parent would not have abandoned one child for another. A real parent would not have altered their mind, shut me out, and expected me to return when things became tough. I told him that's not how it works. You can't ignore me for years and expect me to fix your issues. My mother inhaled nervously. She tried to seem sympathetic rather than guilty. This was unexpected. I nodded again, but did nothing. I whispered that I didn't want to see their faces anymore. Not an eruption. The rage wasn't spontaneous. The truth was simple. They offered me no love, support, or relationship worth keeping. They came because they needed something from me. Not affection, not family. That was desperate. I wasn't interested. My father's face twisted as if to say more. I wasn't completed. Go ahead and cry in front of our family, I told them. I cared not. These family had never been close to me, so if they heard about it, they would undoubtedly shake their heads and text me to ask what happened because they knew, always knew. Whether they openly backed me or not, they never professed to care for me. We both kept our distance, so my parents' sob stories didn't help. They wouldn't make me clean up their mess. Someone who had always been rejected would not sympathize with them. They were wrong to think they could emotionally blackmail me into caring. I didn't want approval, not from them, not from anybody. I finished their game. I saw it on their faces. Slow, awful realization that this was it. They couldn't change my mind. My mother cried. Father slouched, but I persisted. I didn't soften as they left, and my mother glanced back timidly. Update 4. Ethan was almost forgotten. Almost. My life was peaceful for months. Nobody urgent knocks on my door. Avoid emotional blackmail. No distant relatives are calling to accuse me of leaving my poor parents. Then I saw his name on my phone one night. At first, I just stared. Ethan, my brother. Not Ethan. Not my childhood friend Ethan, but a stranger with my blood. Leave it on voicemail. I ignored the second and third. After 4 calls, curiosity got the best of me, and I picked up. It started softly. Then a timid voice said, "Hello." I waited on the counter, arms folded. I would not ease his burden. A weak laugh escaped him. They said it was long. I remained silent. He asked again how I was in my life. Fine. Perhaps expecting me to answer, he paused. I did not. Finally, he sighed. He wouldn't say we were close, but we were family. Family. It was funny from him. I listened while he evaded the genuine reason he called. Our parents were mentioned. He heard they were struggling and felt terrible about the outcome. His half-hearted shame didn't interest me, so I cut through the BS. You want what? Silence returns, he confessed. Our parents asked his in-laws for help. They evidently attempted every possible route, knocking on homes they had never visited. The wife of Ethan was unhappy, neither was her family. His in-laws made it clear that they were not a charity and that Ethan was an adult with responsibilities. He phoned me, and I could tell by his tone, cautious phrasing, an attempt to appear as if he was looking out for them rather than dumping them on me. They're still our parents, he said. Though they raised us. Who was raised? From where I stood, they hadn't raised me. Like a criminal, she addressed Ava. I said, isn't that good news? No black student has ever scored this high in my 20 years of teaching AP Calculus. She must be getting help. My daughter studies 5 hours every night. Someone's feeding her answers. I've been watching her during tests. She finishes too quickly because she knows the material. That's impossible. These concepts are extremely advanced. I had her solve problems on the board today. She got them right, but she must have memorized the solutions beforehand, or she understands calculus. Mrs. Carter, I know you want to believe your daughter is gifted, but let's be realistic here. I've separated her from other students, checked her calculator, watched her like a hawk. I can't figure out her system yet, but I will. Her system is studying. I've taught hundreds of students. I know when something's not right. She doesn't even ask questions in class. She doesn't need to. Everyone needs help with calculus. The white and Asian students ask questions constantly. Your daughter sits there pretending she understands everything. Maybe she actually understands. Mrs. Matthews sighed like I was a child. I'm going to request she take her next test in the principal's office alone. No calculator. Fine. Ava took the test in isolation. Got another A+. Mrs. Matthews called again. She memorized the test somehow. How would she do that? I don't know, but there's no other explanation. I'm changing her to a different test version next time. Do what you need to do. Different test version. A+, another angry call. I'm recommending she be removed from AP Calculus for getting perfect scores for academic dishonesty. I can't prove yet. It's disrupting the other students. They're questioning why they can't score as high. Maybe because my daughter's smarter than them. Mrs. Carter, that's not helpful. I've had parents of other students complaining. They say, if Ava is not cheating, then I must be giving her special treatment. So either she's cheating or you're helping her cheat. I would never. But she must be cheating because she's black. I didn't say that. You said no black student has scored this high in 20 years. That's just a fact. What happened to the black students who tried? They struggled like everyone else. Calculus is hard. Did you accuse them of cheating when they did well? They didn't do this well. But if they had silence, then I need to protect the integrity of my classroom. I started attending school board meetings. Turns out Mrs. Matthews had complained about 3 other black students in previous years. Jasmine Porter, accused of plagiarism in pre-calc, moved to regular math. Ethan Richards, accused of copying homework, dropped the class. Isaiah Brooks tested in isolation so many times he developed anxiety. Switched schools. I met with their parents. We compared notes. Same phrases. Doesn't ask questions. Finishes too quickly. No black student has ever must be getting help. The principal, Mr. Palmer, wouldn't listen. Mrs. Matthews is our most experienced math teacher. If she has concerns, they're valid. Her only concern is that my daughter's black and good at math. That's a serious accusation. So is accusing my daughter of cheating with no evidence. She's just being thorough. Spring semester. The International Math Olympiad Qualifier Exam. Top 5 scorers from each state compete nationally. Proctored by external evaluators. Filmed. No accusations possible. Ava registered. Mrs. Matthews found out. Called me immediately. She can't take that exam. Why not? She's not ready. It'll hurt her confidence when she fails. Let her try. I forbid it as her teacher. You can't forbid standardized tests. If she fails, it reflects badly on my teaching. I thought she was cheating. How would her failure reflect on you? I meant I just don't think she should take it. Ava took it anyway. Scored in the top 3 for our state. Only student from our school to qualify for nationals. The newspaper wanted to do a story. They interviewed Mrs. Matthews about her star student. I always knew Ava was special. She told the reporter, I pushed her hard because I saw her potential. Some teachers might have doubted her, but I never did. The article quoted her extensively. How she nurtured Ava's talent, how she gave her extra challenges, how proud she was. Other parents started requesting their kids be transferred to Mrs. Matthews' class since she was so good at developing mathematical genius. The district superintendent called Mrs. Matthews personally to congratulate her on Ava's success. Mentioned that she was being considered for Teacher of the Year. Then I forwarded the superintendent every email Mrs. Lawson had sent me. Every accusation voicemail she left. She left. Every voicemail where she said Ava must be cheating. Every accusation about getting help. Every claim that no black student had ever scored this high. Every insistence that my daughter couldn't possibly understand calculus on her own. The superintendent's office confirmed they got my email within an hour. His assistant called to schedule a meeting for the next morning. I spent that evening organizing printed copies of everything, my hands shaking as I sorted through weeks of documentation. Each email felt heavier than the last, proof of what Ava had endured while I'd been trying to work within the system. Dr. Mitchell's expression changed as he read through the emails at our meeting. Professional interest shifted to visible discomfort. He asked permission to forward everything to the district's compliance officer, explaining this fell under their discrimination investigation protocols. I agreed immediately. The compliance officer called that afternoon. Her name was Diane Green. She scheduled a formal interview and explained the investigation would take several weeks. She asked me not to discuss details publicly while they gathered information from multiple sources. I understood the need for discretion, even though part of me wanted to shout this from every rooftop. Ava came home from the school reporting that Mrs. Matthews seemed distracted during class. Nervous, barely making eye contact with students. I didn't tell Ava about the investigation yet. I wanted to protect her from disappointment if nothing came of it. Diane interviewed me for 1.5 hours. She recorded everything and took detailed notes about each incident. She asked specifically about the other Black students Mrs. Matthews had mentioned. I provided contact information for the Porter, Richards, and Brooks families. Over the next week, Diane contacted each family. Lena called me excitedly to report that someone was finally taking their experiences seriously. She said Reed broke down crying during his interview because he'd felt so powerless watching Ethan suffer. 3 white parents came forward too, mentioning their children felt uncomfortable with how Mrs. Matthews spoke about Black students. Mrs. Matthews got placed on paid leave pending the investigation outcome. A substitute took over her AP Calculus class. Ava reported that the substitute was encouraging and supportive, treating all students with respect. The contrast highlighted how abnormal Mrs. Matthews' behavior had been. The newspaper reporter who wrote the original article contacted the district asking for comment. The district released a brief statement about reviewing concerns regarding a teacher without naming Mrs. Matthews specifically. I received an anonymous email from someone claiming to be her former colleague, describing similar patterns with Black students over the years that previous administrators had dismissed. The person was afraid to come forward publicly, but wanted me to know this had been happening for a long time. Diane scheduled a follow-up interview to discuss the anonymous email. She asked if I knew of any other witnesses. I mentioned the white parents who recently came forward and suggested she speak with current and former students directly. The investigation expanded to include dozens of interviews. A pattern emerged of Mrs. Matthews treating Black students with suspicion while praising white and Asian students for the same achievements. Several students described her making comments about who naturally excels at mathematics. 3 weeks in, Diane interviewed Mrs. Matthews. According to the compliance report summary I received later, Mrs. Matthews defended her actions as maintaining academic standards and insisted she treated all students equally. Ava competed in the Math Olympiad national competition with the state team while the investigation was underway, where she did well but did not place in the top 10. Being around other mathematically gifted students who respected her skills helped her recover from Mrs. Matthews' treatment. Lena Oliver and I attended the public comment period before the school board's closed session to review preliminary findings while Ava was at nationals. We each spoke for 3 minutes about our children's experiences, and the board chose to schedule a 2-week follow-up. Mrs. Matthews' attorney wrote a letter threatening legal action if she was fired, claiming the investigation was biased and that her teaching methods were protected by academic freedom. The board president acknowledged that the investigation revealed troubling patterns that needed careful consideration and appropriate response. Ava was anxious as the school year ended, had nightmares about being accused of cheating, and felt like she had to prove herself all the time. So I found her a therapist who specialized in helping students of color process racism in schools. The district's legal team found the discrimination case strong enough to appeal. It broke my heart to hear Ava say she was doubting her abilities because Mrs. Matthews' accusations were so persistent, but it made me more determined to finish this. 4 weeks after the investigation began, Diane finished her report and sent it to the superintendent with recommendations. Therapy helped Ava express feelings she had suppressed all year. Dr. Mitchell invited us back before the findings were released, acknowledging that the district had failed these students by not investigating the patterns sooner. She found significant evidence of racial discrimination and recommended mandatory training and probationary status. He apologized to Ava and the other families and explained that Mrs. Matthews would not be fired due to tenure protections and union contract requirements, but her career advancement would be halted. She would receive a formal reprimand, mandatory bias training, loss of her AP Calculus assignment, and 2 years of probationary status with frequent classroom observations. Mrs. Matthews's Teacher of the Year nomination was withdrawn, and the district sent a formal letter to her personnel file detailing the discriminatory pattern. I wanted her fired, but Dr. Mitchell assured me that any future complaints would result in immediate termination proceedings. The school board added documentation of academic integrity concerns, bias training for all teachers, and a formal procedure for students and families to report discriminatory treatment without retaliation. This became part of her permanent employment record and would follow her if she transferred districts. After the district formed a review committee to look for racial disparities in discipline and academic tracking data, Lena, Oliver, and I met with the superintendent to discuss how the new policies would be implemented. The committee would report findings every year and propose policy changes to address any patterns. In a follow-up article about the investigation's findings and policy changes, the newspaper interviewed us about our advocacy. We carefully discussed holding institutions accountable while protecting our children's privacy, and several teachers privately thanked us for speaking up. He also agreed to provide quarterly public reports on implementation progress. It was short and didn't really acknowledge the specific harm she caused. It felt empty, like words written to satisfy a requirement rather than genuine remorse. I read it once and put it in a drawer. I didn't share it with Ava because it would feel more hurtful than healing to see such a hollow gesture after everything she went through. Ava enrolled in a 5-week, 5-day-a-week mathematics program at a nearby university for gifted high school students this summer. I drove her to campus the first morning and watched her enter with her backpack, waving at me with a smile I hadn't seen in months. When I picked her up that afternoon, she talked endlessly about the problems they had worked on and the other students in her class. She made friends with kids who loved math, kids who knew what it was like to see patterns in numbers and get excited about proofs, and the environment celebrated her abilities rather than questioned them. The district required all teachers to complete a bias training program in August that addressed racial assumptions about student abilities and the harm caused by unexamined biases. The training included case studies that looked familiar but had different names. She returned home energized. Lena called me one afternoon in late August to tell me that Jasmine had decided to return to advanced math classes for her senior year, feeling more confident that the new policies would protect her. Her voice trembled, and even though Jasmine had lost 2 years of advanced coursework she would never be able to retake, this felt like a victory. I wondered if teachers recognized the patterns in their schools. A few days later, Oliver called to say that Ethan had decided to stick with regular math and focus on other subjects where he felt more comfortable. Oliver respected his decision. Not all students want to return to where they were hurt. Ethan discovered his passion for literature and history. He did well in those classes. After their initial interview, Isaiah's family declined to participate, preferring to move on at his new school rather than revisit trauma. I respected their decision, but I wish their voices had been included. Sometimes healing requires letting go rather than fighting. Ava's senior year began with a different AP Calculus teacher, Mr. Anderson, who treated her with respect and encouragement from the start. The district's Data Review Committee released its first report in September, showing that Black and Latino students were underrepresented in advanced programs, even when they had similar test scores and grades as white and Asian students. The data showed what families like ours had endured for years, and the report proposed policy changes to address how students were identified for advanced programs and academic integrity concerns. Dr. Mitchell invited me to serve as a parent representative on the Equity Advisory Committee in an email. I accepted, despite the time commitment, because altering systems requires continual attention from people. Ava started applying to colleges in September, spending weekends at the kitchen table with her laptop open to application portals. She wrote essay after essay about her love of math, but they felt incomplete without acknowledging her journey. I wondered if close observation would be enough, or if she'd find new ways to harm students once people stopped watching. The first draft, which focused solely on her love of problem-solving and abstract thought, left Mrs. Matthews out. She showed it to me and asked if it felt honest. I told her that the truth matters, even when it's hard to write about. She started over discussing how she'd learned to stand up for herself when authority figures questioned her abilities based on race rather than evidence. She wrote about how she studied for 5 hours a night to prove she was worthy of being in that classroom, not just to learn calculus, and how being accused of cheating taught her that it's sometimes necessary to defend yourself against people who don't see your worth. Months later, when acceptances came in, admissions officers from 3 universities specifically mentioned her essay during scholarship interviews. Our state's Math Olympiad team placed 2 students in the top 20 at the national competition the following spring, and the program received increased funding and support from the state education department. Ava volunteered to mentor younger students interested in competition mathematics, meeting with them twice a month to work through practice problems and competition strategies. One of them told her that while many students face discrimination, she helped a nervous freshman work through a complex proof, turning pain into purpose and helping others avoid similar experiences. The younger students looked up to her and asked questions without fear of being judged or accused. She encouraged them to trust their abilities and speak up when they knew the answer. Diane called me on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months into the new school year, to report that the district compliance office had received 2 complaints about Mrs. Matthews' interactions with students of color in geometry classes. One parent described Mrs. Matthews as surprised that their daughter could explain geometric proof so clearly, and another described her questioning. Diane's call reminded me that our advocacy had created accountability mechanisms that protected other families. The pattern we documented followed Mrs. Matthews to her new position, making her behavior visible to administrators who might otherwise dismiss individual complaints. The previous investigation made it harder for administrators to ignore ongoing concerns or attribute them to misunderstandings. And the district was taking the complaint. I thanked Diane for keeping me informed and asked her to let the new families know they weren't alone. She promised to connect them with resources and ensure a thorough investigation. The system wasn't perfect, but it was better than when families faced discrimination without institutional memory or support. Ava's top choice university delivered a large packet on a Friday afternoon in December. She opened it with shaking hands at the kitchen table and pulled out the scholarship offer and acceptance letter, which lauded her Math Olympiad performance and math skill. Ava read the letter twice before looking up at me with happy relief, validation, tears, because she had worked so hard for this moment, studying through doubt, accusation, and isolation. The scholarship confirmed what I had always known, but Mrs. Matthews had tried to deny full tuition, plus a stipend for books and research. The next day, I took the acceptance letter to a frame shop and chose a plain black frame with a white mat. We hung it on the living room wall so we could see it every day. Ava deserved to be in advanced mathematics because her skills were genuine and recognized by those who understood mathematical excellence. The external validation from a prestigious university felt like the final word on who was right about Ava's capabilities. The letter symbolized Ava's resilience and our family's refusal to let racism define our daughter's future. At their January public meeting, the school board recognized Ava for her Math Olympiad achievement and college acceptance. 3 board members approached me privately after the public meeting to apologize for not addressing Mrs. Matthews' issues sooner, saying the district should have investigated the pattern years ago when the first complaint surfaced. They gave her a certificate and photos for the district website. Our advocacy changed how the board thinks about responding to discrimination complaints. One board member said she had heard rumors about Mrs. Matthews' treatment of Black students, but hadn't investigated because of her seniority and parental support. They apologized sincerely, even if they couldn't fix Ava and the other pupils. Jasmine was accepted to elite programs, including the State University's Honors College in February, and Lena contacted me in tears. Jasmine proved she belongs in higher subjects in her final year. Lena and I congratulated our kids' successes despite the hurdles they faced over coffee, thinking about how things may have turned out differently if we had resisted years earlier, but also acknowledging that we tried our best when we saw the trend. The district's new academic integrity documentation policy issued its first annual report in March, showing that with instructors having to give precise proof rather than relying on instincts about who looked qualified, concerns were raised more equitably across racial groups. Focusing on our girls' successes was more crucial than regretting the past. The regulation reduced biased referrals. Instructors could no longer accuse pupils without proof, and the figures proved what families like ours had undergone for years, but could not verify without systematic data collecting. Before the reform, Black and Latino students received 3 times more academic dishonesty referrals than white and Asian students, despite similar grade distributions. Mrs. Matthews resigned without protest and left teaching rather than transfer to another district where her record would follow her. Mrs. Matthews stated personal reasons in her resignation letter, but everyone engaged in the investigations knew she was leaving rather than teaching under probationary monitoring. Her resignation took effect at school's conclusion. For the first time in district history, the high school sought 3 math instructors in early summer. Parent representatives were on the hiring committee. Some may say we fired a dedicated teacher, but I knew we held an educator accountable for decades of harming pupils. We asked each candidate how they would handle a high-achieving Black student, how they understood culturally responsive teaching, and if they had ever confronted their own prejudices about who should be in advanced math, one of 3 parents on that committee. 2 candidates were notable for discussing their training and classroom experiences, where they helped all students feel included. Some candidates delivered scripted textbook responses, while others said they never considered race in class. The committee hired one with a master's degree in equity in STEM education and a desire to remove barriers to advanced coursework, and the other with 7 years of experience teaching in a diverse urban district and running an underrepresented student summer math program. I was surprised to see 10 Black kids in AA's senior year AP mathematics class, up from 3 the year before. They didn't have Mrs. Matthews' decades of expertise, but they felt all pupils, regardless of color, could achieve in math. After Mrs. Matthews left and the new teachers had equity training, parents told me they felt more comfortable sending their kids to AP Calculus, which had only 2 Black students. The year before, Ava met other Black kids at summer orientation and returned home, remarking about how different it felt to not be alone. Despite not thinking about it at the moment, it made her realize how isolated she'd felt the year before. Watching those enrollment statistics felt like watching things change for the better. As a public speaker, I was hesitant to accept the district's September parent meeting request to talk on advocacy, but Lana convinced me that other families should hear what we learned. At the front of the class, I printed copies of my chronology of Mrs. Matthews's claims and told everyone to keep a written record of everything, preserve all emails, take notes with dates and times after every phone contact, and document what was said. The system counts on parents giving up, so refusing to give up is the most powerful thing you can do. Several parents took notes, and I stressed that administrators may overlook individual concerns, but not numerous families complaining. I also talked about persisting when principals and superintendents think you're being tough or overreacting. I told others how long Ava endured Mrs. Matthews' cruelty before we discovered the pattern. Some wiped their eyes. After the lecture, parents queued up to talk to me, and their experiences showed that Mrs. Matthews was only one example of a wider problem. One middle school mother informed me that teachers moved her kid out of advanced English despite his high exam results to make him more comfortable. A parent from another high school said their child was discouraged from taking AP chemistry because the teacher didn't think they were ready, despite straight A's in science classes. An elementary school father said his daughter was disciplined more harshly than white students for the same behavior. I drove home that night knowing that the battle with Mrs. Matthews was just one battle in a war that would not end soon, that changing systems required constant attention from people willing to stand up to discrimination wherever it appeared, and that the conversations went on for more than an hour after the scheduled meeting ended, despite the same patterns, teachers, schools, and subjects. The school requested Ava to make the graduation speech after she graduated with a 4.0 GPA. After 2 weeks of writing and tweaking, she let me view versions, but chose what to include. The last speech highlighted persevering when people question you, excelling, and not letting others' expectations restrict your potential. Late May had beautiful sky and temps for graduation. She thanked me and her other supporters by name and explained the importance of having people believe in you when teachers asked if she belonged in difficult classes. She never mentioned Mrs. Matthews' name, but everyone who knew the story knew who she was referring to. Several of Ava's professors congratulated her in the audience after the event. Her voice was loud and clear throughout the speech, and the crowd stood and cheered for about a minute. Thinking about everything she'd been through to get there, I sobbed as I watched her in her cap and gown. The math department chair pulled Ava aside and apologized for not noticing Mrs. Matthews' pattern sooner, saying the department should have protected students better. Her chemistry teacher hugged her and said she had been a joy to teach. Her English teacher said the college was lucky to have her, and her new calculus teacher, one of those hired to replace Mrs. Matthews, said Ava had set a standard of excellence that inspired the entire Oliver. Lena and I watched the graduates cross the stage to receive their diplomas from the bleachers. Ava walked with quiet confidence, shaking hands with the principal and superintendent who had finally listened to our concerns. Ethan walked with a big smile, waving to his family, and Jasmine walked with her head held high, wearing her gold honor cords. Our activism stopped future students from suffering through what our children did. Even though the system was still flawed, we considered what would have occurred if we had given up, accepted the district's initial dismissals, and let Mrs. Matthews continue her pattern. Even though there was still much to do, it felt wonderful to know that we had introduced accountability where none had been previously, and that parents working together could push institutions to confront inequalities they'd rather ignore. Ava worked as a middle school mathematics teaching assistant for children of color the summer before college. In Ava's 6-week community center program, pupils who were told they weren't strong at arithmetic gained confidence and competence. She helped small groups solve problems and showed them that mistakes were part of learning. She frequently returned home invigorated, reporting student breakthroughs or funny remarks. One evening, she told me Mrs. Matthews had attempted to make her question her talents, but now she could use her experience to assist other kids avoid the same worry. Helping younger pupils view themselves as mathematicians was like translating suffering into purpose. In early August, Isaiah Brooks' mother messaged me on social media, saying her son was doing well at his new school, had decided to study in computer science in college, had regained his self-confidence, and was thrilled about his technological future. She may be her junior year support. Her note reminded me that keeping Mrs. Matthews accountable had repercussions. She wrote that knowing someone had fought back against Mrs. Matthews, that our advocacy had validated their decision to remove Isaiah from that toxic situation, and that seeing Mrs. Matthews' consequences had given them closure they didn't know they needed help them heal. I presented evidence on how teacher referrals for gifted programs showed more racial prejudice than student aptitude to the district's equity advisory group weekly in the autumn. The committee evaluated data from 3 surrounding districts that had shifted to numerous talent identification techniques and found considerable increases in Black and Latino advanced class attendance. In December, the school board approved our plan to start the new identification method the next year, which would not benefit AVA, but would prevent younger pupils from being neglected because instructors couldn't see them excelling. Our plan required schools to employ standardized tests, student work portfolios, parent involvement, and instructor suggestions. Ava packed boxes in her room, folding clothes and sorting textbooks to keep and donate while I observed from her bed. She stopped packing and sat with me when I asked her what she learned from Matthews, reminding me that doing outstanding work was the greatest way to answer questions. Ava stroked the cover of a math textbook. She also learned that she shouldn't have to work twice as hard to be seen as half as excellent because of her skin tone. She felt exhausted proving herself and thought future students shouldn't have to. Her voice was firm, but I could tell the year had hurt her. I told her brilliance was vital, but the system she said she would return during college breaks to mentor high school students, especially those who looked like her and needed to see someone who had survived to create the supportive environment she wished had existed from the start, where students could focus on learning rather than defending themselves. I opened a hefty envelope from the new AP calculus teacher days before move-in. As Ava finished breakfast inside, I discovered a handwritten note on school stationery complimenting Ava for her classroom leadership and desire to assist kids understand challenging ideas. Ava enhanced class for everyone and promoted conversation. According to the letter, on move-in day, the dorm parking lot was full of vehicles and families, and we dragged boxes up 3 flights of stairs with other students and parents. The instructor stated that Ava's competence and generosity exemplified the finest of education, and she read the letter twice before placing it in her college folder with her admission documents. Ava's roommate, who was studying mathematics and had competed in high school math competitions, arrived an hour later, and within 10 minutes, they were discussing problem sets and proof strategies, favorite theorems, and integration problem solutions. Ava texted me 4 days into the semester after finishing her first college math class and asking about the lecturer. Ava belonged here, surrounded by people who acknowledged her skills. So I was happy Mrs. Matthews' attempts to crush her spirit failed. Learning was supposed to feel like this. Her final text read, and I knew that despite the painful detour with Mrs. Matthews, Ava had arrived exactly where she belonged, ready to excel without anyone questioning whether she deserved to be. She described how he was brilliant and encouraging, treating every student as a capable mathematician regardless of background, and how he asked challenging questions and seemed excited when students I told him I wasn't interested. He tried again, stating it wasn't about money and that being near them may help. Where was the empathy when they cut me out of their will years ago? Where was the family when they focused on him and ignored me? I reminded him we were never close, that I wasn't wounded by what he did since we were acquaintances who lived in the same house for a few years, not brothers. I persevered despite his arguments. I told him this wasn't a family tragedy or a sad arrangement I was worrying about. They lived with their decisions because they made them. Ethan remained silent. I knew he wanted to argue that things weren't so easy, but he knew it was. He breathed deeply and said he understood that he didn't expect much from me. He was receiving nothing from me, so I said, "Great." He grumbled about how chilly I was and how I used to be different, and I nearly laughed again. I assured him I hadn't changed, just quit pretending. I disconnected without blocking him. It wasn't necessary because he wouldn't call again. My first step after hanging up with Ethan was to sit in silence and let the talk drift away. I left because, unlike them, I had a future that wasn't here. Some weeks ago, I was given a business opportunity in another state. My life might change with this big move. My first reluctance was due to the drastic shift of selling my property and moving to a new area. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed natural. Too many negative memories were here. I acquired this house years ago as a shelter in space, but now it seemed like a weight, a reminder of individuals who never belonged in my life. I decided to leave. My real estate representative showed me the property the next day, praising its condition and high market worth. I scarcely noticed since I had moved on. It was just a house. I was already planning a new city, career, and life. When we discussed the listing price, I simply wanted it done, no matter what occurred. Within days, the paperwork was finished, and then packing began. I only took what I needed and sold, donated, or gave away the rest. I wanted a clean slate, and each item I put in a box felt like shedding another layer of the past. I left behind the furniture I bought to host family because I no longer needed it. I spent years holding on to things, thinking they might make up for the lack of affection I had gotten. But suddenly, I knew they could be replaced. I packed my framed photographs of solo trips and threw away anything related to my parents. Telling a few key individuals was all that was left. I informed my close friends first, and they were delighted and supportive because they knew I needed this. I considered notifying my extended family, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted them to know I was done. I sent a brief statement alerting them that I was moving out of state, selling my house, and would no longer be around. The reactions were predictable. "Where are you leaving and why so quickly?" Some polite well wishes, some not so well, and a few guilt-tripping letters primarily from elder relatives about family unity and my rashness. I disregarded them. Why should I care what they think now? Because they never fought for me. I didn't know them better. Then my parents learned. Ethan or a family may have told them, but another knock on my door made it irrelevant. When the moving truck arrived, I felt light, not scared or sad. I didn't open the window, but watched as they lingered, knocked, waited, and hoped before leaving, just like I would for good. My freedom was worth more than whatever they could have given me in a will. I wasn't carrying others' expectations or hoping for acceptance that would never come. Update 6. Ethan contacted me just after I moved in. I briefly pondered, ignoring it. Ethan's wife was pregnant, and our parents knocked on his door with their bags. They were selling their house and had no savings, but they expected Ethan to take them in because he was their golden child, the one they had given everything to and rewritten their will for. Ethan, the son who had vowed to protect them, was no longer obedient. Their expectations seemed harder to handle with a wife, a baby on the way, and his own duties. Though he didn't beg for aid, his message was frustrated and cloaked in pity. He stated they pressured him. He was overwhelmed and unsure what to do. It wasn't my problem, so I nearly laughed. It never was. I said simply, "You wanted to be their only kid. You are." Then I blocked his number and was